a couple exciting guests to hear from today. So we'll be asking you if you have questions while they're speaking to enter them into the chat on Zoom, because we will reserve some time for Q&A after each speaker. So we'll hear what they have to say, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. We will be monitoring the chat, so we will be reading your questions that you leave in Zoom live to our guests, and we'll answer it in this session. Okay, I think with that said, Ellen, I will ask you to start the recording, and I will hand it over to you to get this meeting started.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ellen Evans, and on behalf of myself and the other DSPNA board members, welcome to the 2020 annual meeting. Here we are. Thank you for turning on your Zoom even when you don't have to. We have a very good and action-packed meeting, so I think it would be best if we get started right away. What I'd like to do now is call the meeting to order. So here we are calling to order. We need to approve the agenda. That's our first order of business. So just to make it easier for Zoom, I'm just going to ask for members of the organization to say or aye if you approve the agenda.
Aye.
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 Okay. And then members also should have gotten the minutes from the previous meeting circulated. So I would need to approve those. So members, if you approve of the minutes of the previous meeting, please say aye.
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 Thank you. And now we can all mute ourselves again. Let me see if our guest has arrived. Is Nithya here yet? I don't think so.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, she's here.
I'm here.
She's here.
She's here. Oh, she's here. Oh, great. Oh, great. Okay. So I'm glad you're here. Now I'll introduce you. We have a new partner in the city. We're excited to work with Nithya Raman, who will become our council member in about a week. She's an urban planner who got into the race because of frustrations with how the city government operates, which we can really relate to, particularly with respect to homelessness. Nithya and her team ran a remarkable civics education campaign and got people interested in how local government works and how it could work in a better world. And this led to a contest with amazing voter turnout in our district. Over 130,000 people voted. She won with the largest number of votes any council member in LA has ever gotten, 70,000. I'll say Councilmember Rue was probably second. He probably got the second highest number of votes at a city council contest that anyone ever has gotten. And he got many thousands more than the winner of the other council district election. So we're really excited to begin this new chapter. So please welcome Councilmember Elect Nithya Raman.
Hi, everyone. I'm trying to figure out how to not see my face so big. Hi, thank you so much for having me today. I am here really just to introduce myself to all of you, to tell you a little bit more about who I am. And Ellen already mentioned some of the facts about this election, which I think are really exciting to me. And to tell you a little bit about our ideas of how we're hopefully going to be running the office starting next week. As Ellen said, my name is Nithya. I have a background in urban planning and urban poverty. I have a master's in urban planning from MIT, and I spent most of my career working on urban poverty related issues, including a number of years in India, working with people who lived in slums and informal settlements there, who were fighting for things like basic services, like running water, toilets, land rights. A lot of the work that I did there has been, sadly, somewhat applicable to the work I've done in Los Angeles on the issues of housing and homelessness. Some of the things that I've done in my past work are to bring data to bear on issues facing vulnerable residents. In India, I did things like developing data on where slum communities existed, what kinds of basic services they had access to. We mapped public toilets in the city of Chennai, for example, and use that information to lobby for more public resources for people experiencing real deep poverty there. Here in Los Angeles, a lot of the work I've done has been on the issue of homelessness. And there too, a lot of the work that I have done has been on resources and a mismatch between resources. So looking at, for example, the numbers of people experiencing homelessness, the paths through which people fall into homelessness, trying to then find a match between what kinds of resources people experiencing homelessness really need, the gaps that we have in our city, which are absolutely enormous, and trying to resolve those gaps through, as I did before, my nonprofit work and my volunteer activism, and now hopefully in my council role. We ran a campaign that, as Ellen said, was really anchored around civic education. What I found when I started this campaign was interesting. So I started this race partly because I knew that there would be increased voter turnout in this race. This was the first election in Los Angeles where our city elections and our municipal elections overlapped. So I knew that there would be a lot of people who were going to be at the polls voting on election day. And one of the things that I was excited about here in LA, in a city where there has historically been very low voter turnout for municipal elections, was to go out and tell people about local politics, to go out and tell people about the powers of the city government, and to talk about real policies that could change some of the issues that we're facing in Los Angeles, and to be really specific about what those policies could look like. What could a better response to the issue of homelessness look like that really grappled with some of the challenges that we're facing today? What could a better response to our housing crisis look like that really grapples with the issue of rising rents, that grapples with the issue of the large number of evictions that our city faces every year? What could a response to our climate crisis look like that really grapples with the extent of powers that our city has to take action on issues facing the climate? And that's exactly the kind of campaign that we ran. And I want to talk a little bit about that campaign because I do think that that is a predecessor to hopefully the kind of office that we will run. We ran a campaign that was premised around going out to people, not waiting for people to come to us. We ran the largest field operation of any council campaign in history. We had people who were anchored in different neighborhoods across the district. We had people going out to people at their doors when it was safe to do so in the primary. And in the primary, we knocked on over 80,000 doors in the district, using both a field operation that we invested in, that was anchored at the neighborhood level, that went out to people, that knocked on doors, that talked to people, that met them where they were. And in the general election, that utilized over 2,000 volunteers who came forward and volunteered for the campaign and used COVID-safe ways of reaching out to people. So that included things like writing postcards, making phone calls, sending texts, writing letters, all of which happened over the course of the last 8 months. This kind of proactive spirit, the idea of going out to people at their doors or at their phones, meeting them where they are, that is what we hope is the spirit that we'll be bringing to the office as well. And I think something that is really important at this moment in LA history, when we are facing a crisis from COVID, which is absolutely devastating the city, and CD4 in particular is facing a huge amount of challenges. We are, according to the best data available, the district that has lost the most number of jobs since the pandemic started. We are host to the third largest number of rent stabilized units in the entire city. We have precincts which are seeing a huge amount of suffering as a result of not just the health crisis, but the attendant economic crisis that we're facing right now. And I think this is a time when the methodologies and the kind of proactive outreach that we did during the campaign ideally will serve us well during this moment as well. That we will be able to go out to people, make sure and proactively talk to them, hopefully understand what people's needs are and what people's challenges are at this moment, and use whatever resources we have available to us to make sure that those challenges are met, that people are able to weather this crisis and stay housed, stay healthy, and get through this with as much vitality as is possible. I know that this is an incredibly challenging moment for LA for so many reasons. We are also facing a massive budget crisis. we're looking ahead at some potential changes in city leadership. This is a very strange moment to be taking office, and a challenging one indeed. But I am excited because I do think that there is a moment of real excitement around local politics and a real willingness to get engaged locally. We are, and to that end, I also just wanted to announce in this meeting that we are recruiting for a CD4 volunteer corps that I hope people will be excited about taking part in if you have some extra time. And that will include a variety of volunteer opportunities, but will initially probably just involve doing outreach related to COVID and additional resources. So with that, I just wanted to introduce myself and to say hello. Oh, and one final piece I just wanted to mention to everybody here is that I'm also a mother and a mother to young children. And I think one of the few people in City Council who is a parent to young children. I have 5-year-old twins. So I'm very excited for them to learn more about what having a parent in the political arena looks like, and for the city also to have more parents of young children involved in public life. And I'm proud to be one of now 3 women who are in our local city government as elected officials, and excited to bring that perspective to bear on my time in office as well. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me. As soon as we have our field staff in place, I look forward to coming back to your next meeting and to introducing you to the relevant field person. And I hope that you'll have as robust a relationship with our office, and hopefully even more robust than you've had with your city council in the past. We really want to hit the ground running and make sure that any transition that needs to happen is as seamless as possible. If there's outstanding issues that you have, open concerns that you're in discussion with the council office at this moment, I encourage you to reach out to us. I know Ellen already has emailed us about this, about any open concerns that you have. And we are talking to Councilmember Rue's office, and they are briefing us on everything. They're sending us documentation. They're making sure it's organized very well. And we're very grateful for them, for the time and care that they're putting into this. But I also want to make sure that we hear from residents. There's always going to be oversights. There's always going to be gaps. So I want to encourage you to reach out to us at contact@nithyaforthecity.com. We don't have our city email addresses yet. So in the meantime, that's the email address that we're monitoring, or you're welcome to call our campaign office number, which is on our website, nithyaforthecity.com. That's being answered, as is our email address. So I wanted to just introduce myself, say hello, express being here and at working alongside you and working with you and working for you as hard as I know that we will, and to learn from you about the most urgent concerns facing your neighborhood, and to make sure that we're ready to take them on day one. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Nithya. Do you have a few minutes to hang out and answer some questions with our members?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Great. So we won't go too long. We have a few minutes reserved for you. I know, Barbara, you're watching the activity in the chat room and are prepared to read out the questions to Nithya. If anyone is not sure how to actually leave a question in Zoom, I'm going to show some instructions and put it up on the screen. But Barbara, why don't I just kick it off to you, and you can read off some questions while we show the instructions at the same time.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. And Nithya, great. Thank you for being with us today. It's so good to see you. We had one question that was called in ahead of time, and so I'm just going to read it from the text. It says, I had hoped he couldn't be here. He had hoped to be on the Zoom, but something came up. And he said, I had hoped to ask that there be a transparent budget, including staff salaries and the council members' discretionary budget. So interesting. He's interested in knowing about the budget. He said he couldn't find any of that information in the campaign.
About our staff budget?
The staff budget and your discretionary budget.
Is he referring to our staff budget for the campaign?
No, I think he's referring to your staff budget in your cabinet, I guess.
Oh, when I take office.
When you take office.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, I mean, we don't have any information about our office available yet on our website. We're still in talks with the city IT department to help get that set up. So that may be why none of that information is available yet. It's also because we haven't put together a finalized budget yet. We're still in the process of recruiting for our team. We're still in the process of understanding what money is available to the office. We know that there is a certain pot of discretionary funds that has been saved for us. I think it was basically split by months. So I believe Councilmember Rue's office had access to 5.5 months worth of those discretionary funds, and we'll have access to the remainder 6.5 months. That will, take us till the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1st. So we are still getting that information from the city. I will say this is a kind of a unique process, not just for us, but also for the city. They haven't done a lot of these transitions before. So we're kind of, and this is the shortest transition period that the city has had because of the change in election timings. In the past, it's been, I believe, anywhere from 2 to 3 months that they've had for transition. And if it had taken election results as long as it took in the primary for it to be finalized, new council members here would have only had like 2 weeks. I had about 4 weeks. So we are going through it as quickly as possible, reading with all of the city departments to understand what we have available to us, to make connections with all the departments to make sure we can follow up on requests that are outstanding and things like that. But we are putting together that budget right now, and I'm very, very happy to make as much of that public as we possibly can. Transparency was definitely a value that we talked about a lot during the campaign, and I hope to demonstrate that in practice when I do take office.
Great, thank you. The next question, I'm just going to read directly from the chat, is can something be done about sports car racing on Sunset Plaza at Sunset Plaza, or on Sunset at Sunset Plaza? Speeding and making a lot of noise. We have called the sheriff several times about doing something like stopping, giving them tickets. However, nothing's been done. Maybe a group of us need to meet with the sheriff, and this person said, I'll be glad to be included and help. And
well,
report.
Yeah, I noticed that there's a Captain Steve Lurie that you're on the call.
Yeah, we can cover that. We can cover that during my section if you want.
Yeah, this might be a question that you would have more insight on than
Absolutely.
I would at this moment. But
yeah.
I don't think it's a sheriff. It's LAPD that's responsible for this kind of traffic enforcement, right?
Yeah, it depends exactly where it is, but I'm amazed that 2 weeks before being sworn in, you can't already solve all of the traffic problems in Hollywood. It's very disappointing. Yeah, a senior lead officer, Wolfchief, and I will cover that when we get to my section. I don't want to take any of your time.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
And thank you, Warren. If you have continued issues on this, we're happy from the office to follow up with LAPD and make sure that we know what's happening, what the plan is, and can regularly update this group on that plan. So I'd love to work with your team, Captain Lurie, to make sure that we're talking to each other about this. And Warren, if you want to email us, we'd be happy to send you updates as we get them.
Great. The next question is, any advice for interacting with your office in the first few months?
For right now, please reach out to contact@Nithya for the city to reach out to us. That's probably the easiest way to set up a meeting or to find a time to talk. We've been really responsive to everything we're getting. And anytime people have requested that our team be there, we've really tried to accommodate almost all of the requests. There's only been a couple that I haven't been able to attend. So we are as responsive as we can be till I take office on December 14th. I just wanted to inform you guys that we'll be starting off with a smaller team than we'll eventually staff up in the whole office. So it'll be a small team that's trying to do it all. But we should be able to accommodate any kinds of conversations, any kind of questions that people have. We're really here to learn. If there's specific walkthroughs that you want us to do to make sure that we understand the concerns that you're having, please let us know. If there's anything, this is really important. We have Councilmember Rue's staff available to us right now. So what we would love to know is there something that we absolutely need to be briefed on before they leave? And if there is, please do flag that this week. That would be the best time to do it. I think that we can always rely on them for questions. I don't imagine that that will be an issue, but I would obviously rather do it while they're still in office and this is, part of their daily work. So if there's anything that you think is really important that we make sure and cover in the transition in more detail, we would appreciate your help in making sure that's flagged for us right now.
That's great. Thank you. The next question is, can you tell us a little bit about your transportation plan?
Sure. Is there anything specific there that you wanted to know?
It just says, that's just all they asked. Maybe the person who asked the question can type in some more information on that.
The walking and cycling, adding the walking and cycling, making the city more, pedestrian friendly.
Well, it's something, again, we talked a lot about a few things as part of our environmental plan. So transportation was really part of the environmental response plan that we had put out. We didn't put out a separate transportation plan. It was a section in our environmental plan. And the hope was that we would be able to make pedestrian safety a priority. There are a number of streets that have already been identified in the city as high injury network streets. These are intersections and streets where the largest numbers of pedestrian fatalities are happening, or fatalities in general related to traffic and mobility are happening. The people who die are people on bicycles and people who are walking for the most part. These are intersections where I think we need to make sure that we are investing resources to make these places safer for pedestrians and for cyclists. And I am committed to doing more of that and to thinking more about that. Parallel to that, I will say that I am also very committed to bringing the community into those discussions in a more effective way. As somebody who's lived in an area which has been the subject of a great deal of discussion around pedestrian and bicycle improvements, I have found it hard in the past to coordinate and communicate with the council member's office. I live in an area which has both CD13 and CD4 in it. And I found that to be a common problem that I faced in dealing with the city as a whole and with the DOT. And so I'm hoping that we can find ways as we are thinking about where to prioritize some of these investments, that we can also open up lines of communication and make it easier for people to participate in those discussions, to make sure that you're briefed and that you know what's happening and that you have an input into how those investments are being shaped. The other thing I really just wanted to say is I really believe in buses. And I think we have made it very hard for people to get around the city by bus. I think buses are a relatively cheap way of investing in public transit that we have overlooked in the city in many ways in favor of larger, more expensive, more deep engineering, investment-oriented projects. And I would love to find a way to prioritize buses in the district and bus travel and make it easier for buses to move around the district in whatever way I can. So those are things that I do consider to be priorities and things that I'm excited about talking more about. We have not yet hired a transportation deputy. We haven't made a lot of hires yet, and we'll be announcing more hires next week. But so we haven't hired a transportation deputy yet, but I hope that we will be able to also have somebody on staff who has transportation as a core skill and knowledge area.
Great. I think I'm going to give you one more question, because as I go through the list of the questions, I think you've answered the ones that have been asked. So the one that I don't see, the one that we haven't talked anything about, would be home sharing. The home sharing app drives up rents and contributes to homelessness. It also contributes to party houses that create real problems. What will your office do to control this?
This is a really great question. And I know one of the things that I I did talk about a lot on the campaign trail was our inability to enforce some of the new home sharing laws that we've put into place. We put into place some regulations, and I feel like we just didn't do a good job of enforcing some of them. And I found that to be a big issue. I know that there have been some changes in recent weeks that I want to make sure I understand before I say anything further on this. I know Airbnb stepped up with a system of their own to do enforcement, which they hadn't before. And so I want to understand more about what they're bringing to the table now to see, you know, is it better to, through their system, to be able to understand who is following the laws and who isn't. So I would like to make sure that I am up to date, let's say, on where we are on dealing with home sharing issues. I also know that there is some discussions on changes now on home sharing, on the home sharing ordinance that have already been up. Have those already come up for discussion or not? Someone who's following this more closely may actually know more than I would. I just know that they had proposed changes already to the very recently passed home sharing ordinance, but I wasn't sure whether they'd already been discussed yet at the council.
That is supposed to come up for council anytime now. So
Okay, great.
it was possibly going to be last week, but it wasn't. So maybe it won't be till the new year. So we'll have time to explain why it's a really terrible law.
Yeah,
It
so,
disproportionately impacts Hollywood.
okay, yeah, very good to
Yes.
know. I know it definitely disproportionately impacts this neighborhood for sure. This is a place where I know a lot of people want to stay when they come to LA. One of the things I wanted to make clear is that we have actually, I know I'm starting office on December 14th, but December 15th will likely not be a very intense day at the council. And that's the only day that I will be at the council before the December recess. And so the next day will be January 12th, will be the next day that I'll be actually seated. And I think there will be a lot more discussion happening. And so we have a little bit of a cushion for me to make sure and get briefed on any issues that this particular neighborhood is facing with regards to anything that might be up for discussion. So I wanted to just make sure you guys were aware of that and say that we were open to having those discussions. Fingers crossed, I have somebody who will be joining the planning team who will be very good, but hope to make that announcement next week.
Great. The next question is regarding construction and COVID, and that it seems to be a huge driver of the COVID-19. Wondering what your office might be doing to help with that. Because there's a lot of construction in the hills, and there's a lot of COVID violations. And the question is, what will your office do to help to mitigate that? Real concern.
Okay, well, this is not actually an issue about which I have a lot of information, to be honest. A lot of the COVID cases, the driving sources of the surge, as far as I have read so far, have really been coming from multi-family or multi-household gatherings, where an individual who is exposed through their work has been infecting other family members, and also in workplaces that are closed where people are having trouble protecting themselves in that workplace. So factories, any kind of like restaurant, back of house at restaurants. I am trying to look for more data on where COVID infections are coming from. And so if I find more, if I have more information on that, for sure, I'm happy to share. I was not aware that construction is a big source of infection spreading.
If we're looking for, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think they're looking more for what will your office do to enforce it. Because there are COVID-19 regulations for the construction sites. And the question is, what can you do to help enforce those regulations? Because currently they're not being enforced, and it is a big driver. It's another big driver. You know, they're working on the sites together without protection.
Okay. You know, I can get back to you on that. Sure. I'm happy to do research on, you know, what is the enforcement process right now, if any. There may not be. It may just be rules that are there with no enforcement with it, as with many of the COVID related workplace regulations. I'm happy to look into it and get back to you. I don't want to speak out of turn here because I don't really know. I don't know what the enforcement procedure is for construction sites yet.
And with time, we're going to take one more question, and that is going to be, what is your position on defunding the police?
I did talk about this extensively on the campaign trail. I think one of the things that I was really focused on was trying to make sure that things that LAPD was doing for which they may not be the most appropriate. Like, for example, in my own neighborhood, I saw that for a lot of homeless encampments, LAPD continued to be the most frequent point of contact between people who are living in homeless encampments and people who were working for the city. I would really love to find ways to make sure that the people who are going out in that situation and in other situations, such as for mental health calls for help, are people who are unarmed and who are trained to respond to those situations, who can actually address those issues. I think that will require investment, and I think some of that investment may be taken from our existing budget, of which LAPD does make up a large percentage. But I think some of the most alarmist numbers that were thrown around defunding the police, I think there were some mailers that went out that said I wanted to cut the LAPD budget by 98%, were not true. It's not something I ever talked about. And I think I invite everyone here to really read some of the policy.
Yeah, we know that's not true.
Safety. Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah, I never said that, and that's not my position. And I think that if you were to look at some of the documentation that we did put out, I think a lot of the things that I was talking about are I think are fairly common sense responses to the issue of public safety in Los Angeles. But I look forward to having more detailed conversations about this going forward.
Great. I'm going to turn it back over to Sherry.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Nithya. We really enjoyed having you, and we look forward to many more discussions. I think the biggest takeaway that kind of stuck with everyone and we're all excited about is to have you and your team here, and then to just make sure that we help with a smooth transition between Rue's office and your office. If there's any loose ends, like the home sharing ordinances, all the stuff with construction, all that good stuff, speeding, we should make sure we let you know this week. And then we'll reach out also to arrange hopefully some tours and knowledge sharing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and look forward to being in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Awesome.
Great. And thank you, Barbara, for helping with the Q&A. I know it's a lot, a cat herding, so we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay. Back to regularly scheduled programming. Let's take a break and have a poll. So the question for everyone is, there's a lot going on in our neighborhood, right? A lot of people, a lot of houses and construction. There are also a lot of beautiful creatures that live right alongside us. So can you guess which one of these is not in our area? A blue jay, a coyote, mountain lion, a gray fox, quail, bobcat, or a woodpecker? I'll give you some time and we'll see where we net it out. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 more seconds and then we'll reveal the answer. Okay, only 3 of you actually got this right, and most of you thought the California quail was not in our area. So let me introduce you to our beautiful California scrub jay, who is often misidentified as the East Coast blue jay. So if you spent time on the East Coast, you may have seen the beautiful blue jay proudly displaying its blue plumage and sassy wing patterns. However, next time you hear that unmistakable loud squawk or see a flash of blue amidst our native coastal sagebrush, say hello to the majestic California scrub jay. Scrub jays can live up to 15 years in the wild and make their nests low in sagebrush and oak woodlands. Just like other corvids, including amazing ravens that also live in our neighborhood, scrub jays hold funerals for their fallen comrades, attracting many other jays who will come pay their respects by standing over the body and screeching over the course of a few days. If you want to make this curious and wonderful bird your friend, leave a few raw peanuts, so unsalted, unroasted peanuts, out for them. And if you run low, don't worry, they'll let you know. Okay, so what was that?
I said, that's exciting. Thank you.
You're welcome. So it's my pleasure. Next in our programming, we're going to introduce Captain Steve Lurie and Senior Lead Officer Justin Wolfchief. So just a little bit about them both. I have a brief little intro. And then please, guys, keep me honest. Feel free to add anything or make any corrections that I might have gotten wrong or left out. So Captain Stephen Lurie, who we've seen briefly on camera, answering some of our chat questions, joined the LAPD in 1997. He was raised in Torrance, California, so he's a local boy. He has an anthropology degree from UCLA and his JD from Loyola. He gave up that fancy law career to serve the community and law enforcement as a detective, investigating violent crimes and attending the FBI's National Academy in Quantico. Captain Lurie has a thoughtful and dedicated approach to policing, and we look forward to continued partnership as we strive to improve the safety and serenity of our neighborhood. And then additionally, I'd like to welcome Acting Senior Lead Officer Justin Wolfchief. Justin is an experienced police officer who knows our neighborhood very well and has worked extensively with Ralph Sanchez, who was our former SLO. So both, please, Captain Stephen Lurie and Acting SLO Justin Wolfchief, we welcome you and give you the floor.
Thank you very much.
Oh, good. You knew
Yep.
how to unmute yourself. You've done
Yeah.
many Zooms, as I know.
Oh my God. Somewhere around 100, I think, at this point. I stopped counting. I know virtually everybody on this call personally from one-on-one interactions, but thank you all very much. And thank you for the kind introduction. That is essentially me, so I won't edit or change it. I've been the commanding officer here at Hollywood for just over a year. And before that, I spent a year commanding our patrol division, which is the folks that are out there doing day-to-day police services in Hollywood. My new partner, Captain Brian Bixler, is on this call as well. I'll have him introduce himself when we're towards the end. He is now in charge of the patrol operations for Hollywood division. I really appreciate you guys having me. I want to talk briefly about sort of the big three, which have been coming up throughout communities in the Hollywood area. And that, of course, is crime, COVID, and budget cuts. And that's what you guys wanted to hear about. So I'll give you my thoughts, some facts, some up-to-the-minute statistics as of Friday afternoon. And then, of course, I'm happy to take your questions. I've also chatted out all my personal contact information. You're more than welcome to use that. My email is there. My cell phone number is there. And most importantly, my Twitter handle is there. Frequently, the quickest, most up-to-date information you're going to get from LAPD, especially during an emergency, will be through either Hollywood's Twitter account or my Twitter account. I've been pleading with folks to please join me there for the last 2 years. And we learned during the May and June periods of civil unrest how just incredibly critical that was. We were getting play-by-play emergency information out. So please find us on social media or reach out to me personally if you have any further questions. First of all, I was really glad to see Councilwoman Elect Raman on the call. I look forward to a solid relationship with her and her people. So first, let's talk about crime. And in Hollywood, over the last 6 months to a year, crime has sort of been a tale of two COVIDs. On the one hand, Part 1 crime is down about 12% in Hollywood overall. That's a really good number, especially coming off of 3 years of significant reductions. It is unusual citywide. We're an outlier in that. And the reason is, frankly, that a lot of the victims of our crimes, especially historically over the past 6 months through the summer and late spring, would have been tourists visiting from out of town. So when I say the tale of two COVIDs, it's obviously a tragedy for our local economy that folks are not here. But it also creates sort of a dearth of victims for our street criminals, and the numbers reflect that. Sadly, that emptiness, that openness around, especially the boulevard and the streets just north and south of the boulevard, have also created a haven for more violent crime. So while crime is overall down in Hollywood, crimes involving firearms, shootings, people shot, and murders are all up in Hollywood, and that does mirror citywide numbers. As a matter of fact, I have the latest numbers right here. People being shot, someone actually struck by gunfire, are up 65% year to date in Hollywood compared to this time last year. That's an incredibly alarming number, and one that we follow very closely. And the simple answer to the obvious question, which is why is that happening, is that gang members from all over the country, not just in Southern California, have adopted California as sort of their playground during COVID. We know this from interrogating them. We know this from their chat on the internet. We know this from their literature and communications, that California is a zero bail posture, combined with their perception, although I don't know how accurate it is, but their perception that California is being lax about enforcement of COVID regulations has created, frankly, an interest in being here. We're arresting people in Hollywood from Detroit, from Georgia, from the Carolinas, from Texas, from New York, and that's fairly unusual for us. And we're arresting them with some pretty sophisticated weapons. So that's an alert to us. It's something we're watching. It's also a point of great pride for us in Hollywood. The officers of Hollywood, and I'll brag about Officer Wolfchief, who's on this call, and all 385 of his colleagues throughout certainly the most challenging time to be a police officer in the last 100 years in this country, have been amazing and have been out there doing a lot of really good proactive police work. And again, I'll point out that is not the case citywide necessarily. So our cops are holding the line, and that's because Hollywood has always been a very special police precinct. Our officers tend to work here for long periods of time, many of them over a decade, and they feel a real sense of family with the Hollywood community, as do I. So I'm very pleased with the work the cops are doing under these terribly challenging circumstances. COVID. So many of you have reached out to me in the last week, especially with the new stay-at-home order that went into effect, about 3 hours ago, and asked if the police department could please start enforcing and making arrests or writing tickets for those who violate the mayor's safer at home order. Those directions come from way above me in the chain of command, from people with lots and lots of shiny stuff on their collars. And the chief of police has decided that as of now, we will be maintaining our educate and provide free masks posture. Now, I'm supportive of that position for a couple reasons that are probably self-evident. First of all, we don't have the personnel to be stopping everybody on the street and saying, you don't have a mask on, so you're under arrest. Right, that would be not make sense. And in our zero bail environment, they couldn't be booked for anything anyway. We would just turn them out the back door of the police station, maybe with a new mask. So there's not really a lot of enforcement to do. What we have been doing, and we're doing it very successfully, is addressing large super spreader events like party houses in the hills. We're now up to 4 officers every Friday and Saturday night whose only function is to enforce the party house ordinance. Our city attorney has 6 ongoing criminal cases in court against habitual party house hosts. And our partnership with Airbnb, which is the best public-private partnership I've seen in 25 years of policing, continues to delist those properties at a staggering rate. We're at a point now where we essentially text or email our contacts at Airbnb, and that house is off their platform. Now, of course, that is only one platform, so they can relist elsewhere, but we are aggressively doing so and providing addresses to the mayor, who is the ultimate decision maker on shutting off DWP water and power. That's another question I get from a lot of community members. It is not up to me or the police department whether power and water get turned off at a problem location. That is ultimately the mayor's office's decision. And then there's COVID in our station, another common question, and I appreciate the concern. We've been hovering a little bit above the public infection rates that you see on the Department of Health website. So that's pretty good given the fact that police officers are forced to interact with lots of people that they don't choose to and who may or may not be COVID positive. We've had spikes here and there, knock on wood, and thank goodness we have not had anybody get seriously ill. And that continues today. So our cops have been doing a great job with mask wearing and sanitation. We have aggressive cleaning crews at the station periodically to sanitize, and we're creating the best environment we can for our folks. Finally, a specific crime situation I want to address with you guys, and then I will take any questions that you have on any of these or other topics, and that's the holidays. You can already see in the mainstream media and in some of our social media that the number of package thefts and mail thefts are starting to go up, right? And I fear that COVID is also going to exacerbate this problem. So-called porch pirates, or the people who cruise around a neighborhood looking for an Amazon box and just rip it right off a front porch, they're aware that many of us, myself included, are essentially staying home and doing a lot of shopping online. Right? So as soon as you hear that Ring doorbell alert, or as soon as you see on your camera that there's a box up front, or you get an alert on your phone that someone has delivered a package, please be aggressive about taking that inside. If you're using UPS or FedEx, think about giving them permission to leave it at a side entrance or in a rear yard if it's safe to do so. Because what we're seeing is these folks really are pretty quick opportunists. They're just driving up and down the street. So if there's nothing visible on your front porch or walkway, it's unlikely that they'll move onto your property to steal something. But we're seeing those reports start to go up. We always do in December. So please be aware of that and pass it on to those who you influence and meet and speak with. That is a very preventable crime from the victim standpoint and a very difficult crime for the police to prevent. We can only be in one place at one time with each police car. So it's impossible for us to be in front of every home preventing that kind of theft, but it's really fairly simple for the community member to think, wow, especially this month, as soon as I get something delivered, I'm bringing it inside. So we appreciate your help on that. And then finally, the senior lead question. I know that Ralph Sanchez, the senior lead officer, has moved beyond human into semi-godlike status in the Hollywood Hills. As soon as I got the job at Hollywood Division, everybody said there's one person you have to meet right away to be successful, Officer Ralph Sanchez. And he and I have developed a great relationship and a great friendship. Unfortunately, I can't release specifics about his condition and how he's doing, because of course that's very private and confidential, but he is recovering well, and I anticipate he will return to his slow duties at some point. Until then, and I know this has been the source of some frustration, it was my decision and mine alone to rotate on 90-day bases different officers through that senior lead position to see how they do with you guys, to see how we feel about their performance, because we anticipate eventually Officer Sanchez will retire. And this is such an important community, and that senior lead position is so important that I want to get a chance, for lack of a better term, to audition potential senior lead officers and see how they do. And it just wouldn't be fair to put one person up there in Ralph's place and then have a competition for his spot when he leaves. That would give a clear and unfair advantage to the person who had stood in. So each 90 to 120-ish days, we're going to rotate a new acting senior lead through there. Hopefully only one or two more rotations if we can get Ralph back, which is a perfect segue to introduce the current acting senior lead officer up there, someone who most of you, I hope, know personally, Officer Justin Wolfchief. I'll have him say a few words, and then we will sort of team take any questions that you have about any of these topics, and I will cover the recent budget cuts. I saw a couple questions come through about that. Justin, go ahead.
Good evening. It's Justin Wolfchief, acting senior lead for Ralph Sanchez, and excited to be on this meeting. Thank you for having me. And I've met some of you. I met Ellen and Vadim, several of you guys in the field. Responded to several text messages. I just got a bunch because I was off this weekend. But excited to be here. I've been working in the car for 4 years, under Ralph, and when Ralph does come back, I intend to stay on the car and continue serving your area. And thank you.
Thanks so much, Justin. So I got a couple of texts when this meeting started about budget cuts. I've been intentionally not saying much on these meetings about how budget cuts will affect Hollywood because I didn't have any facts. And as I've told all of you, I will only report information to you when I'm positive about it. So here are some facts about how the recent $150 million budget cut approved by City Council will affect Hollywood. Our Hollywood Entertainment District, which is a 60-officer unit that's charged with securing Hollywood Boulevard and the venues and entertainment areas around Hollywood, has been reduced from 60 to 40 officers. So that's a net loss of 20. And as far as I know, that is the only cut that is planned to Hollywood. I can tell you we fared better than other divisions. Pacific's beach enforcement detail was cut in half. Several units in Central Division were completely eliminated, as have some specialized detective entities, et cetera. But the specific net effect to Hollywood will be a loss of 20 officers from the entertainment district. You may have seen a recent LA Times article essentially saying that the city administrative officer has introduced potential plans to lay off 950 police officers. I don't frankly delve into politics, especially when I'm in uniform. My guess is that might be at least 50% a shot across the bow to try and get unions into the negotiating room. I can't perceive or imagine a 950 officer layoff at the LAPD. If that happened, it would be devastating for public safety. It would mean closing police stations. It would mean closing police stations. It would mean drastic cuts. I've told you guys before, we are by far the most under-policed major city in America. New York City, close to 40,000 police officers. Chicago PD hovers around 18 to 20. And at full staffing, we're 9,900. So I hope that is not really what the city is planning. But there will be many more meetings like this one if we get the word that 950 cops are being laid off. So I had hoped that Ms. Raman would stay on and we could hear her feelings about that. But I'm meeting with her and her team next week or the week after, and I can assure you it will be top of agenda when I speak to both her and Councilman O'Farrell about what that would mean to a place like Hollywood. And now I will stop talking and I welcome any of your questions, whether they're via the chat. I know we have someone monitoring, or if you just want to offer them up verbally. Thanks very much for having me, and I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you, Officer Lurie. I'm going to go back to some of the questions that were asked during Ms. Raman's presentation because they're more aimed at your group here. So the first question is the Strip in West Hollywood, which is a sheriff's jurisdiction. However, those of us who are above the Strip in LA will suffer from speeding and traffic directed to us by Waze. Serious problem. What can you do to help?
Yeah, well, let's just get rid of Waze. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, the traffic apps have been problematic because, of course, they create an efficient route, but that route tends to be consistent, right, and the same. And I know there's 3 or 4 throughout the hills that tend to bring people there. I have an excellent relationship with Ed Ramirez. He's the commanding officer over at West Hollywood Division. We talk weekly. During the civil unrest, we were talking hourly, and I'll discuss it again with him. I'm going to let Officer Wolfchief talk a little bit about what we've done on the LAPD side. And maybe talk about some potential teamwork there. It is difficult when a problem literally straddles jurisdictional dividing lines, sometimes to get a handle on it. Justin, can you talk about our motors and what we're doing over there?
Yeah, when I met with Ellen approximately like a month and a half ago, and I contacted Elliot King and Mark Buck to do some traffic enforcement up and down Doheny. Elliot King is the night guy. Mark Buck is the daytime liaison, and he unfortunately, the last day I worked, which was Wednesday, he was involved in a traffic accident. So I'm guessing on his motorcycle. So I'm guessing we may have a new person soon. He was a very good contact, but we'll work with that the next person when they come in line. And one of the biggest things was speeding cars going up and down Doheny and Sunset Plaza. The loud cars. I was meeting with Allison late one night when I stopped one coming down the hill. So we're working on it. I contacted our patrol officers working on it, and as well as the motors to do some stuff about these. Some of this exhaust is out of control. So we're on it and we're working it. It sometimes it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And those two officers that Justin named, by the way, were motorcycle enforcement officers that more or less, they don't answer to me. They have their own command structure, but they're assigned to us, and we've had great luck with them, exercising discretion at sort of our direction on where to be. So thanks, Justin.
The next question is it pertains to what we just talked about. It says a lot of road racing is from the TikTok residents of 9145 St. Ives Drive. And I imagine the TikTok friends and other TikTok houses, because there's quite a few TikTokers that are renting the houses in the hills. And they talk about they're speeding up and down the Bird Streets and along Sunset Plaza. They get angry when the police officer told them to stop having their all-night parties and begin speed racing all night instead. So instead of having the party house, now the TikTokers decided they're just going to speed up and down, not just Sunset Plaza, but they're coming up all in the Bird Streets.
Yeah,
I guess that's a question. So
yeah, a couple things there. Yeah, when we break up parties, sometimes they do that. Of course, in comparison to being a COVID super spreader event, we'll take the reckless driving, although it's not excusable. So our priority will remain eliminating those super spreader parties. Our motorcycle officers are good for this. Actually, our party cars who are up there to enforce the parties, they turn in quite a bit of traffic citation work. So I know that they're up there paying attention to that as well. I did see a question earlier about speed humps and things like that. Those are city engineering things, which are a wonderful idea and we fully support, but very, very difficult to accomplish, especially in a city that is in the red, probably the worst it's been in a century. So excellent questions for our new councilwoman.
Can I touch on the 9145 St. Ives? So I met with them and I spoke with them about the racing in the street, and that several neighbors had video. The problem with St. Ives is on one of the nights in particular was there was a party on the other side of Weatherly, where on St. Ives, and they were going back and forth from that location all the way up to Doheny, and Swallow, one of the houses up on Swallow. So they were going back and forth between the homes. Because like Captain mentioned also too, that a lot of the clubs are closed down, so they're using these houses as parties, as nightclubs. So we're combating it. And one thing that I'm trying to do is with the two party cars at night, I'm going between the residents, the different locations that we know are problems, and I'm doing my own visual inspection of these locations back and forth as that's happening. So on certain weekends, we're definitely doing as much as we can to mitigate that problem.
Appreciate that, Justin.
Just a couple comments. Thank you, Senior Lead Officer Wolfchief. We're so glad that you are assigned to our area. Another is we're fortunate to have Captain Lurie to lead our Hollywood division. Thank you. I think it's important that people recognize how much we really appreciate all of you. Those are coming up in the chat. And then the next question is for Captain. Any relationship with VRBO, where most of the short-term rentals seem to be now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I said, Airbnb stepped up big time about a year and a half ago. Assistant Chief Arcos set that meeting up for me, and it took off from there. The short answer is no. The other short-term listing platforms, I wouldn't say they're hostile towards police involvement, but they have no interest in being labeled as police partners. Let's put it that way. So we have been unsuccessful despite high-level attempts to have like a sort of a team delisting, right? If this is a problem location, especially a problem location where a crime has occurred, you would think it would be common sense for every short-term rental platform to want to delist them. And we have frankly failed to find cooperation among the other ones, which is why I'm always calling out Airbnb as having such a good common sense concept of partnership with us there. It doesn't do any platform any good to have a shooting or a murder occur at one of their parties. But the short answer is no one else is cooperating with us.
Great. Okay, thank you. One last question is, we're excited that you're out there on the weekends with the Party House Patrol. We have them every day. Is there any chance we can get more help during the weekdays?
Yeah, great question. So again, I promised when we started, I'd never talk politics in uniform. My patrol force is shrinking. So we do what we always do, which is prioritize calls beginning with life-threatening emergencies that are occurring right now, and then we respond to those first. This is also usually what happens when there are concerns raised about response time, which response times in Hollywood are pretty good, but they are going up. In other words, they're getting worse. So it's taking us longer to get to calls for service. It's because we have fewer cops. So that's not an excuse. And yes, we will always get to those calls when we hear them, but it is the best I can do to dedicate full-time folks on the weekends when we tend to be heavily deployed anyway. Next week, we will have a series of meetings to see how this 20 officer cut affects us on the weekends. And my fingers are crossed that the Ouija board works out and I can keep those 2 units on the weekends, but I'm not positive I can do that. We're about a 400 person division. So that's what, a cut of 5% of our staff. Yes, we will always do the best we can. You should always call us on those, especially during COVID. That's a 911 call. I sometimes get the answer like, well, I emailed you, Captain. Why didn't a car come by? So I don't monitor my email full time. There's 100 people partying at a house with no masks on. You call 911 and tell them you need the police to come up there.
Great, thank you. And in the chat, I have to tell you, there are quite a few compliments. They appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to turn it back over to Sherry.
Thanks, Barbara. And one thing that I would like to say, I know there's been some chatter in the chat room, and we did mention this is a partnership. So if there are things that we can do to also help support you, because you've been helping us. So if you can give us a list of those who aren't playing nice and don't want to partner with the police, and we can apply some pressure that way. So if you give us a list, we can kind of work it from our angle. And additionally, if there's contacts or anything we can do to convey how much we want you to be funded and have all the resources that you want. So
Yeah,
if there's any
appreciate that.
asks, if you can share them with us, we would be happy to also do that.
Will do. I can tell you in other community meetings, I'm hearing all the same things. It's one of the many reasons we're blessed to work in Hollywood, where the community is as a whole very supportive of us. Some of you mentioned in the comments, let us know how the meeting with Ms. Raman goes. I am optimistic and hopeful. And I think it's going to be a refreshing new start, but make no mistake about it, the new LA City Council is going to be interested in drastic changes to the police department. So I'll stay out of that fray, except I will tell you guys that if there are 6 cops left in Hollywood, then the 5 of them and I will do everything we possibly can to keep you safe. But if you're concerned about numbers like $150 million budget cut, if you're concerned about numbers like laying off 950 police officers, which is a staggering concept to me, telling me that you support me is wonderful, and I'll pass it on to the troops. You need to be telling your elected officials they're not staying in office if they make moves like that, if that's what you guys choose to do as an organization. And I will stay apolitical in it and serve you the very best that I can. So I wish you all happy holidays, whichever holidays you celebrate, and please reach out if you need anything.
Thank you.
Oh, I do want to introduce my partner. I apologize. So the way an LAPD division works is I'm overall responsible for delivery of law enforcement services in Hollywood, all of them. But because it's such a busy place, I have a partner, and his name is Captain Brian Bixler, and he is in charge of all the day-to-day operations, the police cars that are out there answering calls, writing tickets, coming to your home if you need help. And he's joined us just to introduce himself. He's actually on vacation, so I really appreciate him taking the time to be here. And Captain Bixler, if you're on, go ahead and say a few words.
I am on, and I'm not going to turn on my video because you would all be jealous of the sunset I'm looking at in Ventura right now on the beach. So I'm not going to do that just to save you all some grief. But my name is Brian Bixler. I've been on the department for 24 years. This is my 3rd tour in Hollywood. I was there as a brand new police officer back in 1997. Came back to work our prostitution enforcement detail in 2001. And I'm just super honored to be back there to serve you guys now as a patrol commanding officer, and to have such an amazing partner like Steve Lurie. He's been a great mentor to me, and I really look forward to serving you guys and meeting some of you guys when we can meet face to face. That's it.
Great. Thank you everyone so much. And I know we always have a lot of questions. So if anyone has any other questions, you can drop them in the chat. We'll wrap them up and send off an email. Or if you guys are sticking around and you want to stay for the next trivia poll, I don't hold that against you. It can
I
be
get
fun.
in while Captain Lurie is still here? I wanted to speak to the new councilman. I live on Hollywood Boulevard between Marmont and Kings Road, And we have 7 houses on a hillside here that at the bottom of the hillside is Johnny Depp's estate and another house. And we've had an encampment of homeless over the last 10 days. They've made raids up to all the houses. They've been, the police, and thank you, Captain Lurie, has been terrific. You've made 4 arrests, 1 for burglary. One of them was on parole. In all cases, and you responded immediately. We're so satisfied with the police response. In all cases, they were released within an hour and a half or couple of hours, and they were back here. The burglar re-burglarized the same house that she was arrested for. Me and my wife are terrified. We're, sleeping with the lights on now and taking shifts. I guess since I'm the only one that expressed this alarm, it's just happened here near Crescent Heights in this part of the Hollywood Hills and not where you are. So they have weapons, and I was going to put this to our councilwoman to, make her aware that, we have to be a little less sympathetic to the homeless and more. And then, of course, once this becomes a national news, then there's going to be impact home prices and tax base. And I've seen this happen in New York City, where I'm from.
Yeah. You're getting into a conversation that I'm able and thrilled to have, but I don't want this to be a 6-hour meeting about sociology. But absolutely, I'm sad to hear that you're frightened. That that's the antithesis of what Justin and me and my partner got into this work for, and I hear it on every Zoom meeting from 1 or 2 or 3 people. That crisis has got to be solved, and it's probably not going to be solved by the police department, which is a point where Ms. Raman and I agree 100%. The chief of police announced about 10 days ago that one of the things he had to cut because of the $150 million initial slash to the budget was our so-called HOPE team, HOPE, which is the primary homeless outreach capability we have. I think he did that in response to the public outcry that police departments should not be the primary responders to folks who are homelessness or suffering from mental illness. The 30-second version of the 6-hour conversation is, I agree. We never were the best choice. The problem is we're available at 2 in the morning on Christmas Eve and no one else is. And I'm afraid maybe what the budget cut did was eliminate our ability to do that before we stood up a better, more robust capability to do that. So what I'm going to challenge Ms. Raman and the new council to do is to develop that capability and deploy it into the field quickly, because we're not going to be able to do it anymore, and that's not going to help the situation. As to those folks being released immediately, that's almost certainly COVID related and not a city issue. That's a Sacramento issue, under the new Department of Justice rules for incarcerating folks during COVID. But yeah, we see that happening, unfortunately, throughout.
And Captain Lurie, so I know Nithya already gave her contact information. It's contact@nithyaforthecity.com, where we can contact her directly with situations like this. You've also, and Justin, have left your contact information. Is there any other place that we should maybe submit things like this to? Is there another body or agency?
Yeah, so, elected officials are the ultimate solution, although they're a slower one. And no is the answer. So bring them to us. Obviously, there's an emergency happening. If someone is in your yard or near your home or what have you, that's a 911 call. You're all familiar with 311, which is the non-emergency way to reach city services. I know it can be slow and frustrating. And the primary community outreach point throughout the city, not just in Hollywood, is your senior lead officer. So for this case, that's Officer Wolfchief. That should be your first call. Not because I don't want to field those calls and I'm happy to, but he's frankly better able to. He might be out there in a police car that day. If not, he knows the young police officers who are, whereas my function is terrifyingly administrative in nature. So a lot of those times when I get that direct outreach, I just send it directly to Officer Wolfchief.
Okay. And then maybe another option is contacting the county or something like that for services, but I know that's outside of the scope for you.
Yeah.
And we are over time. So
Yeah,
we
sorry.
do really appreciate, and honestly, that is an important issue. It's affecting all of us. And so thank you, Peter, for sharing that. It's something that we're going to have to deal with together. So thank you for raising that. And then also thank you for the answer.
Yep.
Great.
Take care, guys.
Thank
One
you.
more
Have a
thing
good
before I
night.
go. One more
Thank
thing
you.
before I go.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. So let's get into our poll. Okay, so we have a few historical situations here that could have happened in our neighborhood. And so what we're asking is, can you guess which one isn't true and didn't happen in our area? So number one is a house was being moved on Doheny and became stuck because a lot of motorists ignored the no parking signs. The second one is there was an assassination attempt of a well-known mobster that controlled the Sunset Strip at a nightclub in Sunset Boulevard. And then the third story is a truck fell into a hole caused by a secret underground tunnel that connected several Hollywood Hills homes during the Prohibition. So we'll give you a few seconds to think which one you think might be a farce, and then we'll reveal the answer. And we had a really good song to play for you guys. I don't know what's wrong with it. I can't hear it. I don't know if you can. This is a dead even tie between number 1 and 3 for you all. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll and share the results. So for all we know, all 3 of the stories could be true. But until we get more proof, I'm sorry to say that number 3 is false, despite how believable it is given our construction traffic. So although it is rumored that Hollywood Hills homes did in fact have tunnels to share the beloved libations during the Prohibition, we don't know if there was any within our area. Another interesting fact on the Prohibition was that Sunset Strip retained its reputation as a lawless area that thrived during the Prohibition and continued to expand rapidly as an entertainment destination once the law changed. For the first one, the home, if you remember it, it actually occurred in 1952. The house became stuck on Doheny just below Sunset because of the cars parked on the road. And for the mobster story, that one was actually true and very interesting. Mickey Cohen was a notorious mobster who controlled the Sunset Strip. One evening in 1949, Mickey and his associates were attacked by shooters at Sherry's nightclub at 9039 Sunset Boulevard. Several cars were shot up by the shooter, who hid across the street, and the ambulance came to tend to injuries, with the patron leaving in a stretcher. Sherry's nightclub later became the Key Club and is now One Oak. Okay, so that was a nice break. We're going to move on to some DSPNA committee reports. I'm going to hand it over to Ellen for the president's report.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to keep this relatively brief since I want to get to the rest of things also, and I know this is a long meeting. So I just want to give you a quick recap of some great things that happened and ways you can get involved and things like that. So in the last 6 months, our big achievement was launching patrol in half our neighborhood. We're going to talk more about patrol, but that was a tremendous amount of work, and a lot of people took part in that, and we got it done. And now we just have to get it done for the rest of the neighborhood, and that's for later in the meeting. The pandemic brought party car responsiveness. So we have more cops coming to the parties. They haven't quite stopped, but I think without what's going on, it would be much worse. We've made it through the challenging part of the DWP Sunset Plaza Drive project, yay. And that resulted in what I think was one of the biggest things that happened in the 6 months was that David Rue made a motion that would help protect ingress and egress and emergency access in the hillsides, which is something we've been talking about for a long time. And now we have to make sure that the new council member takes it up with a degree of seriousness and urgency. Our construction monitoring program became more robust, and the board voted to add a budget for having him just respond, not just to the sites that pay for monitoring, but to any general neighborhood construction issues. And I think that that's worked out really well, because now when somebody says, hey, a cement truck just dumped a load of cement on my street, we text Matt and he goes and deals with it. Our membership has grown. We had about 100 members last year. Now we have about 150 members, and that's great. And we have regular communication with close to 700 people. We had phenomenal work done by committees, which you'll hear about in the committee reports. The enforcement committee really kicked into gear in this 6 months. The Heroes Committee was begun to recognize public safety officers. And the events committee kept it up despite being in a pandemic. We have some very serious challenges for 2021. Just for having a brand new council member is going to be one of them. We have to help her understand what we were in the middle of with Councilmember Rue, get that going, make sure she understands what's going on in our area. We've started that conversation, but it's just going to make things much slower, which since they were slow already, it's going to be pretty slow. So particularly of concern, the Hollywood Community Plan is going to be finalized in the first half of next year, probably. Some of what we asked for was incorporated, but we need to fight for more. The biggest thing is the vacation rentals ordinance, which you should know about from the many emails. Passage of this ordinance will make our neighborhood party house central. And I'm grateful that DSPNA is on very solid financial footing that's going to allow us to really, really fight this if they pass it. And the other big issue is those Sunset Boulevard electronic billboards are going to impact us more and more. The one that they're building near Horn is going to be awful, but it was approved well before we started as an organization. And now they're trying to build a fully LED wrapped building where Hornburg Jaguar is, and there's just going to be more. So we're going to start to investigate what it would look like to actually fight that. So what we would love it if more people were to get involved. What you can do is, first of all, join if you're not a member. I see most of the people on this call are members, but if you're not, please join. And also get involved in committees. We can expand our reach and effectiveness by working together. If there's something you want to do, say so. We can do it together as a community. If the more we do, the more solid and unified our neighborhood will become, and it's going to benefit us in so many ways. And that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you. So we have just a brief report from Jim and/or Vadim on the finance before we move on to the next set of topics. So Jim or Vadim, I'm not sure which of you is speaking on this topic.
Yeah,
if you're muted. Okay,
yeah,
great.
I will be speaking on this subject, but I need someone to turn on my share screen.
Okay. Ellen?
I'm taking care of that.
Thank you.
Now the other one, because I'm using my phone for the audio.
Yeah, you can do it. It's
Oh, there
you
it
can
is.
share.
I got it. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to use this. Please bear with me.
We're seeing your desktop.
Yes, I need to undo this somehow.
You need to stop sharing and share again.
Okay.
And pick the other window.
All
Okay, we
right.
see it.
Okay, you see that? Okay, beautiful. So I'm very excited to present you with the financials as of November 30th. As you can see that our operating account has $79,772.82. We have a restricted accounts that total $262,786.03 for total account balances of $342,558.82. We also have advances of $4,000 for various projects. We expect to receive the money in our account within the next couple of months. We also have a payables of $262,786.03 with our net assets of $83,897.82. Out of that amount, $45,000 is restricted. As to our statement of activities, which is basically an income statement. Construction fines, we received $5,450. Membership dues, $21,858.30. And also we have a program funds, which are restricted, $22,500. For total revenue that we received this year through November 30th of $49,808.30. We also have expenditures of $15,138.27 for the net revenue of $36,670.03. The following page is our statement of cash flow that basically shows the difference, how our money flows from the beginning to the end, which is basically more of the accountants will appreciate that. So we did an excellent job in having approximately $50,000 in revenue, and we expect to grow more so we can have more funds available for different projects. Jimmy, unless you have something to say, I'm done with my report.
No, I think that's everything. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions regarding any numbers, any concerns?
You know, I think unfortunately we are a little short on time for that, but I would ask that if anyone has any questions about the budget or any of the finances, please drop it in the chat. And then Vadim, would you keep an eye to see if any questions come up?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much. Perfect. So let's go to the next topic. Ellen, you're going to talk about some voting and the board.
Yeah, so this is the part of the meeting where we do our actual business of the meeting. So the first order of business is to vote on new board members. Every board member has a 2-year term, so every other year, half of them either change or renew. And so everybody should have gotten the list and the link to the statements. And so our board members that we are voting on today, and since it's the same number of board members as seats, we'll just affirm them with a voice vote. Stella Gray, Mitch Guzik, Stella Jong, Vadim Levatman, Patricia Murphy, and Sherry Taylor will be our 6 board members who we're voting on. And I want to recognize Seema Hassan, who is stepping off the board for her good work with the board and with the Emergency Preparedness Committee. So now all members should say aye to accept this slate or nay to not.
Aye.
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 Aye. So welcome to our new board members. And thank you very much. And thank you for your service. And thank you to all the board members who are going into their second year, because it's a fair amount of work and everybody takes on something and does a lot for our neighborhood. So now we're going to change the bylaws, which there's no real big changes. What happened is, so I wrote the initial bylaws of the organizations, and now we have the resources to get them to conform to what the organization is and how it actually runs. The changes that have been made safeguard DSPNA in the long run and better articulate the practices moving forward. I circulated a link in the newsletter yesterday with the new bylaws. If there's any questions, let me know. Is there any discussion about the new bylaws? Okay, in order to adopt them, can all members say aye if they wish to adopt
Aye.
them?
Aye.
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 Anybody against? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. And now, okay, so now the other good thing that happened this year was that we got a third seat on the neighborhood council, which is the official advisory agency to the city. So when we say something to CD4, let's hope they listen, but they're really supposed to listen to the neighborhood council. So we didn't get just a regular seat this time, because we have now 2 seats that we vote on at an election that's run by the city that are for the North of Sunset District. Now we have an additional Doheny Sunset Plaza Neighborhood Association seat, which we have to fill ourselves, but it has to be by a democratic process that includes people who may or may not be paid members. So we need to adopt the proposed policy, and I'm actually just going to read it so you know what it is. The election of a representative for the neighborhood council shall occur during the association's mid-year meeting. Nominations will be taken in writing in advance of the meeting. Notice that the association is accepting nominations shall be provided to all persons subscribed to the association mailing list, and this notice shall be disseminated on social media as well. Nominees must be residents or owners of property in the DSPNA area, but need not be members of the association. Nominations can be made at the meeting as well. All residents and property owners present at the meeting shall be deemed eligible to vote regardless of membership status. Does anybody have any questions or discussion about this?
I do. If this person is representing DSPNA, at least they should be members, or members should be voting for that person.
That is against the city law. Basically, this is that it's required that we open the process to people outside. It's highly unlikely that people who aren't involved with DSPNA would end up getting the DSPNA seat.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so all in favor of adopting this, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, our business is done. Woot woot. Now we can move on.
To the
Sherry, do you want to
security.
transition us?
Yeah, thank you. So I will share some content on my screen, and Vadim and Ellen are going to tag team various aspects of our security patrol program, our current operations, which Vadim will speak on very briefly, and then Ellen will touch on real briefly our plans to expand. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that. Go ahead, Ellen.
I
Or
think this is
Vadim, sorry,
part.
Vadim.
Okay, I'm very excited about the patrol. I wasn't sure how we're going to do it. It was like a pilot program in the beginning. I feel that we are transitioning from the pilot into the permanent phase. For past 5 months, I didn't hear any complaints whatsoever. As a matter of fact, the LAPD officer briefly mentioned that it helps them out because our security patrol constantly calls them and identifies where the party houses are and where the problems are. So they're very grateful for that aspect of it. In the beginning, I was waking up in the morning and I was reading the reports for the shift, and I did not know what to expect. Every day something was happening, and it was like a challenge. It was kind of a surprise. I didn't know what to expect. In the past couple of months, the only thing that I'm reading is people having a good time in their cars, having a good time viewing, our neighborhood city lights. And that's a good thing because we do not have anything major happen in our neighborhood in the past couple of months. So I'm grateful for that. And I think the patrol actually helped out a lot. So I think it should continue. It should continue strong, and we need more participants so we can expand ours. That's all I got.
Okay. Sherry, I think I have a different slide.
I saw it was moved out. So 1 second, let me unshare. The order was changed. I assumed it was you, but hold on 1 second and I can display that.
Okay, so now we're trying to get patrol a new car with a new driver in the area that is not yet served. And the service runs from 10 o'clock at night till 6:30 in the morning. And the patrol officer would drive around. And I think that depending on the location of people who are participating, the patrol would make it around the neighborhood, the phase 2 expansion area 4 times in a night. And that might not seem like a lot, but we've really seen the amount of basic mischief go down a lot. So we need 90 people to commit. There are over 1,000 households in this area. We need 90 people to commit in order to launch, because we're not looking to do anything more than cover the cost. The cost for 7 days a week, 1 shift, is $8,000. So if we get 90 people to commit, we can start this service, which I think will help if there's encampments, they don't want to be in an area where there's patrol going by all the time. So if you want to learn more about this, or if you want to help recruit the people that we need to get to 90, we're at 30 and change now. You can email dspna@dspna.org, or you can also look on our website. We did a whole webinar about the expansion, and all the information is there. To register your commitment to do it, it costs $100 a month, and we take that money quarterly. You can go to tiny.cc/DSPNA capital S security. So I don't know if there are any questions, but if there are, you can either send them or put them in the chat and I'll answer them.
And I also want to add something, that all the money that going into this program stays in the program, and it's specifically earmarked and restricted for the security patrol only.
Oh, and I did forget one thing. As we get more subscribers, we can add shifts. I think that we might be in a place in the pilot program where we could add 2 daytime shifts. So the idea would be to get to 24/7, but we just need to build gradually.
Yeah, baby steps.
Baby steps.
Great. Thank you. I know there's been so much work going into this, Vadim and Ellen especially, setting this all up and arranging this for the behalf of all of us. So if anyone's interested, just go to our website and it says security patrol right in the top navigation. You can click on that and learn more about it, and then follow the links. Whether you're interested in joining, you're in like the Bird Streets area and you want to join and sign up, great. You can do that on the website. Or if you want to learn more about this phase 2 expansion program that we're just talking about, you also will see information about that as well. So just check out the website or reach out to any of us or in the chat if you have questions. Great. I'm going to move it over to Lisa regarding engagement and outreach.
Thank you, everybody. Hello, I'm Lisa Tornaden, and I head up used to be called Outreach Committee, but it's also AKA Engagement. And this committee is comprised of 3 areas: marketing, community outreach, and events. And Barbara will cover the events piece at the end of my chat. Our collective goal across all 3 is to develop, test, and launch programs that build awareness of DSPNA, create a sense of community, and also encourage active participation and support of the top priorities in our neighborhood. And that's what Ellen was alluding to earlier. Going into 2020, our list of activities was quite comprehensive, including designing and installing permanent metal signage throughout all of the DSPNA neighborhood, many informative and fun in-person events at great hotels and venues in our area, a robust speaker series on topics that are informative to our neighbors. Unfortunately, or however, beginning in March, we had to quickly pivot our list to focus on what was doable, and that list became very short. However, we have accomplished some items, and tonight I'm just going to focus on one new program that we were able to launch. It's called Thank Your Local Heroes, and it's meant to recognize and thank our local LAPD and LAFD officers who support our community every day. We had a great team that did a pre-launch, but in a nutshell, on a quarterly basis, DSPNA will deliver an assortment of prepackaged healthy snacks to our assigned LAPD and LAFD sites, along with a meeting communication that tells them how much DSPNA appreciates their service to our area. We piloted an offshoot of it, which was very well received. Thank you, Mitch and Vadim. On election day with pizzas that they delivered to the LAPD, but our rollout will focus significantly on healthy grab-and-go snacks that the officers can grab, either eat in their office or in their cars or whenever they need some extra protein. So we will launch our first delivery during the holiday season of this year, and then continue with a quarterly rollout and maybe switch up some of the items, but that's basically the main goal. So that is quick for me, and Barbara, I can turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to speak to the 2020 events, and as Lisa mentioned, we had many events planned for 2020, happy hours, block party, speaker series. Obviously, we were not able to move forward with any of those in person. However, we did have one happy hour in March at the Chateau Marmont. You may notice the background of the slide. Those of you who are with us, it was just such a lovely evening, and it was nice to be able to get at least one face-to-face in 2020. We have since held 2 happy hours. Last one was in November. We had an expert speak to mosquitoes and present, since we had a huge problem with mosquitoes over the summer, we had a person present, and also had the New Edition Hotel that's located on Sunset and Doheny present how to make mojitos. So we had a lovely night of mosquitoes and mojitos. We plan to have happy hours going forward in 2021 every other month. And from the topics you see on the screen, we're going to select 2 topics per happy hour. And we would love your feedback on additional topics, as well as thoughts on what you see here. You can send it to the website, or I'm sorry, you can send your ideas to engagement@dspna.org for feedback on what you see on the screen. and/or we'd love to hear about what you would like to talk about at a happy hour. Those are just a starting point for us. We will take your feedback, and we'll be putting out what the first happy hour is going to look like very shortly. With that, I'll turn it back over to Lisa. I'm sorry, back to Sherry.
Great. Thank you so much, Barbara. And then I will pass the baton over to Carter to speak on the Planning and Land Use Committee. Carter, if you're muted, please unmute yourself.
I'm muted now. Hello, I'm Carter Brodman, head of the Planning Land Use Committee. And interestingly, and I think favorably, things have slowed down a bit this year, in part because of overheated market a bit, and also because of COVID. The number of projects we've reviewed are dramatically fewer than the previous 2 years. I think that's a good sign. When I say projects reviewed, that means applicants who are seeking a zoning administrative variance of some kind, whether it's small or large. And when those happen, that's how we get exposed to what the project is. If the project is by right, meaning they're not seeking a variance and they're doing everything exactly to code, we don't necessarily get an opportunity to review those drawings. So we have looked at just a couple of them. Those are early in the year. Those projects come back to us, and we're still awaiting input from the applicant with respect to incorporating requests. And one project in particular, we're in sync with the zoning administrator, and I have not heard anything back from them. I think they're kind of in an old pattern and trying to figure out how to proceed. That's a project that was up on Frank. That was a pretty aggressively scaled project, and we worked to reduce the size, the mass, the amount of grading, those kinds of things. That's where we are on that project. And then the other major issue, which is not in our jurisdiction, is the illuminated billboard process in West Hollywood. The first project that we have been looking at, again, it's not in our jurisdiction, but we're encouraging people in the city of West Hollywood, such as Sierra Tower, who are most impacted by this project, current Fernberg Jaguar site. It's a proposed multi-story building sheathed in digital billboards that will be visible for quite some distance, and it dramatically and adversely impacts the residents of Sierra Tower, who are residents of the city of West Hollywood. They're highly engaged in that, and they are our best ally because the City Council of West Hollywood prefers to hear from its own constituents, of which we are not. That's pretty much what I have today.
Well, that was a hot topic in the chat, so thank you for addressing it. And I'm sure if anyone has any other maybe ideas on other potential allies that we want to make sure that we've reached out to, you can help make connections, please let us know.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea because, again, large numbers of residents in the city of West Hollywood are ideal, and large numbers come in the form of larger condo buildings and apartment buildings, of which is the predominant housing type in the city of West Hollywood. So the more of those we can get together, the better. I've communicated several times with the manager at Sierra Tower. She's very bright, very connected to her constituency, and very motivated on behalf of her constituency to reduce, if not eliminate, the billboard component of this project. We're less opposed to the building and more opposed to the light pollution that would result from the billboard component.
Right. Well, thanks for having our back, Carter. Great. I'm going to move it over to Barbara again to talk about the Enforcement Committee.
Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, I'll wait till you get the screen up. Great. I want to touch base regarding my 311 LA app and website. You see it on the screen. I highly recommend you become very familiar with the app or the website. I really encourage you to get more familiar with the app because it's just so easy to use. A lot of success is in taking care of many issues and timely. They get done very timely. On the app, you can create a service request in various categories such as animal related, private property, refuse pickup, just to name a few. And there are several under each of those. And that was just a small snippet of what's out there. I personally report potholes on a regular basis, and they're usually repaired within 2 to 3 days. It's like clockwork. Now, even with COVID, it's unbelievable how they are still very quick about going about repairing the potholes. Once you do put a service request out into the app or 311 on the website, you can go back and check the service. You can just say, I want to follow up on my request, and let you know where it stands. And finally, there's a category for other services. And so it's quite broad. Additionally, I want to mention the DSPNA has an enforcement committee. Happy to say we've had success in enforcing the HCR, which is the Hillside Ordinance. Notice the picture. Look familiar? I'm sure many of us see similar developments in your area. Our enforcement committee is reporting various issues on a regular basis to keep the neighborhood in check. A huge issue that we're seeing is outside of the construction hours and days. For example, no outdoor work is permitted. No construction work is permitted on Saturday and Sunday if it's a permitted project. You can go to DSPNA's website, and in the FAQ is a simple link to enable you to report any construction issues. It honestly takes less than 30 seconds to report these sites. The FAQ section can also be helpful on how to report party houses, how to manage mosquitoes, the COVID-19 violations, and more. So please check it out. There is just so much information available in that on the website, but more importantly in the FAQ section. And I want to close by thanking our enforcement team for all of their hard work this year. It's greatly appreciated. I don't know if you've noticed how much quieter it is on Saturdays. The construction, for the most part, we went out Saturday this past weekend. We go out frequently just to follow up. And we do have some road sites out there that we report, but because of all the work our committee has done, it's been very successful. And I'm just urging all of us, it takes a team, it takes an army to really get our arms around this. So please go to the FAQ, report what you see, and I believe that we're all going to be being able to manage our community much better. So thank you for everything. Back to Sherry.
Thank you. And I think that kind of gets us through the rest of our program, but we want to give some time to Ellen to close us out for this evening. So Ellen, do you have any final words before we wrap?
Just thank you, Sherry, and everybody who worked so hard to put together this meeting and who does so much for DSPNA. And thanks to everybody for attending, and get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Again, if you have any ideas or feedback, or you want to get involved as any of these issues really speak to you and you want to help make a difference instead of complaining about it, join us. Reach out to engagement@dspna.org, and together we're stronger. Have a great evening, everyone.